What movie inaccuracy was so bad that it broke the immersion? The science of shrinking and growing things in Ant-Man is incredibly inconsistent. The way they claimed shrinking worked was that they moved the atoms of an object closer together, and because of this shrunken objects were much denser and could hit really hard. By that logic, growing objects means you're moving the atoms farther apart and they should get less dense, right? So why does every grown object somehow get even stronger? When the Thomas train grew in the movie, it broke through the wall of a house and crushed a car. In reality it should have crumpled against the wall. Prometheus, when he says they are 500 million miles from home, which wouldn't even get them out of the solar system. That was a shockingly dumb line. Like the screenwriter couldn't be asked to just Google the distance to say Alpha Centauri. Or at least Pluto and make sure it was a number bigger than that. Someone got paid to write that. Edit, I am aware now that apparently the phrase is couldn't be asked. I heard it wrong at some point and have been using it incorrectly for years. Till. Edit 2, now a bunch of people are telling me that asked is apparently just the American version, which is what I am, so maybe I was right the first time. Whatever, y'all know what I mean either way. Not me, but my dad, and the ridiculousness of this still makes me smile. My dad teaches physics, but he's really into science fiction, so he can accept a lot of shitty explanations for the sake of staying into the narrative even if they're a bit of a stretch. We were watching the first G.I. Joe movie in theaters, and he sat through the nanobots eating the Eiffel Tower, he sat through the exoskeletons that let dudes throw buses, all without complaint. Then we get to the final climactic scene, the Joes have detonated bombs in the ice above Cobra's underwater lair, and the ice falls down and destroys their base, and he mutters under his breath, "Ice doesn't fucking sink." Edit, since I'm the top comment, love you dad, you're the real MVP, just not much of a storyteller. I think the mindset is that things that nanobots and super-strength exoskeletons can do are all in the realm of this can all be attributed to science fiction bullshit, while ice is real and its properties are pretty well documented. So sinking ice can't be excused by artistic license, thoughtful face. The scene in A Quiet Place, spoiler, in the grain silo, where one of the kids is buried in grain, was atrociously inaccurate to the point of malpractice. You don't just reach in and pull someone out of that situation with one hand. You are pulling not just their weight, but the weight of all the grain surrounding them. It's deadly and people die despite the best efforts of rescuers. They want me to believe that a maniac rigged a bus so that a bomb explodes if it drops below 50 miles per hour. Okay. They want me to believe that a city bus can leap a 40-foot gap in a flying overpass. Come on, really? But that was okay with me, I just had to change my expectations for what kind of movie this was. I'm not super picky about this stuff, but in Green Lantern, Ryan Reynolds wakes up on Green Core Planet or whatever and some dude comes in and gives him a power ring and says, "This ring will give you all the information you need to know." Very next scene is Reynolds and Alien flying around with Reynolds wearing the ring asking "What's that?" And what's that? I get Reynolds is an audience surrogate, and he needs to ask these questions, so I know what's going on. But then why put the line in about it giving him all the info? Just take it out. Probably not exactly what you were looking for, but this inaccuracy/contradiction of its own script is why movies that spend so long in development hell just naturally turn out not so great. Too many cooks in the kitchen. As a trial lawyer, any courtroom scene. I tend to stay away from courtroom drama movies, but I've yet to see an even halfway realistic one. Now imagine, what if she was realistic? Edit, everyone is asking about My Cousin Vinny. Been a long time since I've seen it, and I am not a criminal lawyer, but I have two issues with what I remember about the movie. 1. Vinny orally requests the prosecutor's entire litigation file, and he just gives it to him. Presumably there would be possibly exculpatory things in there, required to produce, and work product/privileged materials in there, can't produce. 2. Marissa Tomei's character wouldn't have to come up with the exculpating idea of the tire/car tracks on the fly on the stand. She would have been an expert, her testimony would have been well thought through, prepared, and set long before trial. Captain America's shield. It's supposed to dissipate kinetic energy, so how the does it freaking bounce? In comic, it isn't pure vibranium. It is an alloy of vibranium and an experimental iron alloy that was already an attempt to artificially create adamantium. The metallurgist who made the shield fell asleep while smelting the metals together, and no one has ever been able to replicate the damn thing. So basically a wizard did it, and the shield does whatever the fuck the writers need. Because when Captain America throws his mighty shield, all those who oppose his shield must yield. Any movie that has the subplot my significant other went to a therapist and now they're breaking up with me because they're sleeping with the therapist. But overall everyone acts like it's no big deal. No. That therapist would lose their license and possibly go to jail. Number 1 ethical rule of therapy: do not ever have a relationship with your clients. You forget, there has to be a highly impractical 3D GUI. Need to quickly look up a list of files stored in a hard drive folder. Do you want to? A. Simply type in find, type fname my MacGuffin file.txt and have a simple ASCII text list appear quickly showing where all copies of that file is. Or B. Navigate a giant fucking 3D maze where each room is a folder you then need to walk inside of as you hunt for that one single file. Superman 1978. I know it is a superhero movie, and a kind of cheesy one at that. But A. You can't reverse the Earth's spin just by flying around in the opposite direction really fast. B. How in the actual fuck did the screenwriters decide that if you somehow make the Earth turn the opposite direction time goes fucking backwards? Seriously guys? You weren't even trying? Okay, this probably never bothered anyone else, but back in the day there was a drama/suspense TV show called American Gothic. It was set in South Carolina, where I was born and raised. And in one scene a woman is planting spathiphyllum, aka peace lily, in a line along her fence for spring gardening. When I finally watched this show I worked in a retail nursery. She planted a row of indoor tropical low-light plant in the blazing back 40 acres of hell-full low-country sun. There is zero chance any of those plants would survive 48 hours. And she was specifically introduced as the town's prodigal daughter, who moved into her late mother's house and was recreating their garden. Eragon. Pretty much the entirety of the movie, no specific part. I think you must be confused, friend. They never made a movie out of Eragon. Smile? Next thing you know, you'll be trying to convince us that they made a live-action Avatar, The Last Airbender movie too. Ha! Can you imagine? Hey guys, did you hear they made a live-action Dragon Ball Z movie? Oh, if only right. I mean, these are beloved childhood shows, and Eragon was a really great book series with a really cool hard magic system, so if they ever did make movies out of any of them, which, sadly, we all know they haven't, they would definitely turn out amazing, and not be total flaming piles of horse shit. Smile? Last Airbender Bamed called Ung. I just don't understand why they got that so wrong. It's not a book or an old school RPG where you just read the name and never heard it spoken, so people had different ideas on how to pronounce it. Last Airbender was an American-made cartoon. There was no ambiguity in how to pronounce Ange. I was also really annoyed that they had the two raptors that intercepted the C-130 both pull alongside the C-130. I'm not a military person, but even I know the typical intercept procedure for an unresponsive aircraft calls for one fighter to pull alongside and wiggle its wings while the second fighter takes up a position behind to shoot down the aircraft if needed. How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, when she tells him about Nick's tickets after they go to the first game of the series and eat dinner during Game 2. Game 3 would have been in Sacramento, so that trick should have never worked. Same thing at the end when they say the final game is Wednesday in NY, but Game 6 had not been played yet, so we would not know for sure. Anything in the Flash TV show. Mach 10 isn't real is said by Barry, and that is literally just 10x the speed of sound. But then he can just casually dodge lightning like it's nothing later, like an inch from his face when he notices it, and can leave a car and save a guy before it hits. Any scene where a fighter pilot ejects and just carries us like nothing happened, no spinal compression injuries. Extra points for deliberately ejecting from an otherwise functional aircraft as a showy stunt maneuver. You get to fly a desk for that. If you're not in prison. The prissy librarian whining about the Gutenberg Bible. No librarian would ever go and get the key to the specially built cabinet that's sealed in to preserve it, touch it with bare hands, hug and cradle it, and present it to people who are building a fire and say, "Don't you dare burn this." Real librarians don't act like that. In any scene where you see the characters through the windshield, the rear view mirror is a Chekhov gun. You'll only see one if it's explicitly used. The driving scene in Whiplash made me nervous when I saw it. He's just freaking out behind the wheel, driving at an ungodly speed. My only thought was, if this wasn't a movie, he'd have been hit by another vehicle by now. Then he gets hit by the fucking truck. Lucy? 10% of the human brain. My proof that, contrary to how I used to believe the world to work, just because Morgan Freeman explains it doesn't make it plausible.
Hey adventurers and fellow Redditors, are you tired of hearing the same old battle music during your D&D sessions, or just looking for the perfect soundtrack for your next epic quest? Well, let me introduce you to Amazon Music Unlimited. With Amazon Music Unlimited, you get access to over 100 million songs, ad-free. That means whether you need an intense combat playlist, relaxing tunes for a tavern scene, or just something to vibe to while scrolling Reddit, we've got you covered. And it's not just about music, there are thousands of podcasts too. So if you need a break between campaigns, you can catch up on your favorite shows. Plus, there's the best part. If you sign up today, you can try it free for 30 days. No commitment, no hassle, just endless music and podcasts tailored to your taste. So whether you're crafting your next D&D campaign, painting minis, or just chilling with your party, make your soundtrack legendary with Amazon Music Unlimited. Hit the link below and start your free trial now, because every adventure needs a killer soundtrack.
My favorite part of that movie is when Freeman's character is describing the things humans could potentially do by using more of their brain. A student asks him if he has any evidence of that, and he basically says nope. Obviously the plot of the movie supports his assertions, but lol. Braveheart, all of it. From the very first scene to the last, they told a true story without any semblance of truth short of using real people's names. As an action/adventure movie, it's awesome to watch, just don't pitch it as historically accurate if you're not even going to try. Ready Player One. You are a Japanese nerd gunter who is supposed to be an expert in nerd culture, and the robot you chose is the basic Gundam. Any robot, any, cough. Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann. In the book it is explained that large robots and such are one. It was briefly explained in the beginning of the movie. So you do not necessarily get to choose what gear you may win, but it could be purchased. In the book it was won on some montage chapter in which they got an Ultraman pill thingy which he used. It's always a jolt to me when movies set in France have 99% talking with an English accent or whatever, then one random character actually has a French accent. Like Man in the Iron Mask and that one girl at the beginning, I guess to remind the audience this is France amidst the distinct accent of Jeremy Irons and co. Gladiator's probably really great, but are we just going to let them get away with claiming that Marcus Aurelius wanted to bring back the Republic? That always got me. A lot of people were aggravated with Gladiator for that reason. Critics said, they made a fantastic movie, but then they had to throw in some extremely fictional elements, in an otherwise very historically accurate film. They could have very easily made the film just as exciting and interesting without making up a few story parts. Filmmakers' response: this was meant to be a fictional story from day one, we never intended it to be taken as historically accurate. The fact that we got so much historically correct is thanks to an awesome production team, but we never meant it to be taken as a true story. Personally, I think it turned out to be one of the best movies ever made, and I don't care that it's inaccurate. Learn that stuff from history class, not movies like Gladiator or 300. In The Secret Lives of Pets there is a scene where the bigger dog is pulling the smaller one behind him by its leash. At one point, the smaller dog is shown being briefly stuck between, then popping through two bars that are supporting a banister on a front stoop. If the little dog could barely fit through, how the hell did the big dog get in between them? Geostorm? Sci-fi weather control machines are one thing, but there's one scene where the two main characters do a spacewalk outside the ISS to retrieve something, and neither of them are wearing a tether. And of course it results in one of them nearly drifting off into deep space. A lot of people don't think it's a big deal, but in one of the Harry Potter movies, I forgot which, Harry revisits some memories and sees his mother as a young girl, and she has brown eyes. That really took me out of the movie, because one of the big links Harry is supposed to have to his parents is that he has his father's hair and his mother's eyes, which are green. That was a major thing in the books. Characters commented on it all the time, and they seriously couldn't have given the actress contact lenses or something. Edit: okay, since it has been brought up multiple times now, yes, I do know that Radcliffe had blue eyes in the movies, and yes, I do know that he couldn't wear the contacts, and yes, this is another inconsistency. Still doesn't mean that they couldn't have at least tried to make the actress's eye color somewhat similar to his, so that there's some last remaining link to the idea of the books. Any computer anything. Especially when they're pulling parts. It was one of those shows, Law and Order, CSI, IDK, I don't remember, but their big bust was taking this guy's computer, and we have the drive right here, he was trying to wipe the thing etc M at J0RL33T-0R. Too bad you're holding a power supply. Gravity. And not even the part where Clooney ignores Newton's first law and floats off for no reason, though that was horseshit. Earlier in the film, Sandy was removing a bolt with a ratchet and fumbled it when it came loose. Before Clooney caught it, it was floating through space, rotating in a clockwise direction. I am familiar with a few left-hand thread, LHD, fasteners, notably non-drive side bicycle pedals and drive side bottom bracket cups. These are used in applications where bearing rotation might loosen the fastener with use. Through extensive angry research, I found that the International Space Station does use a few LHD bolts, but only to fasten the solar panel array, which rotates. There is no reason the telescope/imager/whatever the fuck Sandy was installing would use such a bolt, and I can't believe nobody who vetted that movie knew how a fucking wrench works. In any movie where they finish a radio call with over and out. In radio language, over means I'm done talking, now it's your turn, and out means the radio call is now completely over. So saying over and out is basically saying, I'm done talking, it's now your turn, this radio call is over. Just takes me out of it. Not so much an inaccuracy, but a plot hole. Snowpiercer is supposed to be an socialist allegory about the proletariat class in the caboose being exploited by the upper classes in the front of the train. The problem is, the caboose dwellers don't do any labor. They don't have any value. They aren't being exploited. They're just there. The only service they provide is producing children to serve as a part in the engine. But, we see plenty of children in the front of the train, slavishly devoted to the train's creator, who would probably willingly serve in the engine. The writers could have got around this hole by claiming that something in the front of the train, food, drugs, exposure to something, etc., made everyone there sterile. So they kept the caboose quarantined to protect them and keep them producing children. As the movie is, why did they bother keeping the caboose? All it did was breed a class of angry, rebellious people who had to be fed and policed. Remember the old Lost in Space movie? Well, I gave it every break I could. Then they had the usual turbulence, and in the control room they had to hold on to the big control panel. It moved and lifted with them. Obviously some light wood or worse, cardboard. It still haunts me to this day. I liked it when they are running through the library and the cold is chasing them and they slam the doors shut in the room with a fireplace and are instantly safe from 200 cold. I only wish the cold had said darn, they closed the door while stamping its foot or something. That was the most ridiculous movie from start to finish I've ever seen. I can't really remember much because I've blocked it out of my memory, but a major plot point was that they needed 3 passwords and then after they go to, well haha no we don't need all 3 for some fuck reason. Then the main antagonist's motivation for betraying his country was some half-assed bullshit about corporate greed or something. Who the fuck knows, that shit was awful. First, CPR actually has a relatively low success rate. Not to mention the whole point of CPR is to keep blood pumping until other treatment, like a defib, can be administered. The only time CPR will spontaneously make someone wake up is if they were just unconscious. When any amateur/found footage movie blatantly has a soundtrack inserted into it. Off the top of my head, Blair Witch, 2016, did it, The Pyramid did it, The Visit did it. Bitch, unless you're telling me The Witch is playing that music out in the woods, I should not be hearing it. People are spending a portion of a movie's goddamn budget on something that doesn't fucking need to be included. How dumb can you get? The movie changed quite a bit from the book. Emma could control fire, not air, and the kids' ages were very different to name a few things. In the book, whites couldn't shapeshift and Halogasts gruesomely devoured people. They did not just eat their eyes. Also, loops are better explained and aren't as full of loopholes. They take you to a specific area in the past where you can relive the same day. If you leave the area, you will go forward in time from that point. If you go back through the loop, you will go to the present day, which is constantly moving forward. You can't change the past. Sorry Gramps, but you're staying dead. I have a theory that some of this is intentional. It makes it immediately apparent to anyone who has served when someone is trying to claim military experience for a variety of reasons, most of them charity. It's the same reason why crime scene investigation type shows get so many things horribly wrong, Bleach for Blood. They want the show to be entertaining and have the right kind of feel, but without instructing the audience with how to get away with murder. The stock exchange one really bothered me. Like, they would allow any transactions that day go through. They would suspend trading for so much less than a freaking terrorist attack. Also, they go into the tunnel in the early afternoon and come out in the late evening. Couldn't agree with you more about when someone is supposed to shock using a defibrillator. Hint, it's literal what the device is called, defibrillator. I repair medical equipment, and an AD, basically an automatic defibrillator, will not shock if it detects a flatline, and we have to test it to make sure that it doesn't.
Hey there, fantasy fans. If you're looking for an epic listen, you have to check out Rosamund Pike's narration of the Wheel of Time audiobook. Rosamund Pike brings so much life to Robert Jordan's world. Her performance adds an extra layer of depth to the characters, making the story even more immersive. Whether it's her portrayal of the fearless Aes Sedai or the intense magical battles, she nails it. It's like experiencing the Wheel of Time in a whole new way. And here's the best part. You can get it for free with Audible's 30-day trial of Audible Plus. You'll get access to this incredible audiobook and more, completely free for a month. So if you're ready to dive into this massive fantasy world, this is the perfect way to start. Don't miss out. Check the link below and start your journey today. 100% free for qualifying people. Completely free. Click the link.